Greetings to one and all, and welcome to our second episode of Conversations with Humanity on Our Health and Us, Your Health and You. I am Sheena of Embodied in Nature, Sculpted by Sheena, and thank you for tuning in with me as I unpack and organize 13 years in 13 episodes. Even though these conversations are health related, I would like to disclaim that I am not a medical doctor, and these conversations are in no way meant to give advice on health issues, but instead to relay information on the health of the human organism. I am also not a scientist, and I do not lay any claims to anything at this time. I am merely an experience, reaping the benefits of passion when it is met with curiosity, and I'm merging into the full expression of everything I have endured over the years of existing, the wisdom that was developed along the way, and the knowledge that I learned due to my curiosity. Make sure you do what I always do. Whenever I learn information, when it's either contradictory, new, or even triggering, I always do my own research. Do not take my word for it. Everything that you will learn here is indeed factual information, but I am not providing any evidence. I am not providing any studies related to them. I am going to mention those things. It is not my role for you to understand. That is your role. For you to truly understand, you need to go do the research, and you need to actually see and experience the conversations and the experience of those who would have come through these things and benefited from a lot of the stuff that I'm telling you now. Now, this episode is a tie into the first conversation where we talked about human health as cellular health. That episode was a very brief overview of cellular health within the 4 dimensions of well-being that I would have talked about. If you didn't see that episode, you might want to go tune into that episode before watching this one. Today, we look a little closer at how human health is cellular health with today's topic, which is cell health is homeostasis. These 4 dimensions are what did it for me. Being able to see health beyond the physical aspect of life and understanding that they all tie into each other and extremely interconnected was the thing that allowed me to see it from the deeper lens. Not only that allowed me to see it, but the thing that allowed me to resonate with my own experiences. From the first episode, I would have told you that I've experienced a few health complications and a few other things, not just health of the body, but in regards to my emotional experience to life and my mental experience in life. Over the years, I've come into and experienced my own healing without actually attempting to heal. And then seeing it at the scientific level allowed me to resonate with my own experience a lot deeper, which allowed me to resonate with my organism a lot more. It was because I had already experienced the things that I was studying. I had already lived through so many of these experiences, but only at the level of my conditioning. These 4 dimensions are so intimately connected that they will always impact each other in every direction, whether it is the direction to health, wholeness, and wellness, or the direction to scarcity, to lack, and to disease. The physical self, which is the body and all systems that make up the body. The mental self, which is the creative and interpretive definitions of physical and psychological phenomena for the sake of understanding. So you have to understand that the mental self is natural phenomena, but the way we understand it is just creative representation using language. The emotional self, the aspect of being that experiences and expresses feelings, emotions, and moods. The energetic self, the subtle energy systems which influences well-being. And all 4 of these create our life. All four of these dimensions create our experience and our expression of our life. And unless you understand all of them, you do not understand the self. The self. And the self and the identity are two different things. The self is the human organism. The identity is the mind. The identity is the mental self. But you need to understand that your mental self is being curated and created by other aspects of yourself. In order to truly honor our well-being, we have to honor all aspects of self. We need to align our actions, our daily actions. We need to align our environments. We need to align our thought patterns with all of these things at an energetic level, so that when they are stimulated within, they could create the correct responses in order to balance our organism, which then balances ourself, balances our identity, balances our relationship to life, our relationship to others. So let's get it going. Cellular health is homeostasis. But what is homeostasis? Homeostasis is the fundamental biological process where organisms maintain a stable internal environment regardless of what is happening in the external environment. The balance is crucial for cell function, growth, and survival because it allows cells to carry out necessary processes. This is the general consensus for homeostasis, and it applies across all dimensions. However, every dimension comes with its subjective control mechanisms and their subjective rules in the health of the internal environment. So all four dimensions fall under the general consensus of homeostasis, but every single dimension, the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the energetic, have its own personal relationship to homeostasis, and it also has its own personal definition. At the physical level, homeostasis is the body's self-regulating processes at the level we can see with or without a microscope. The level where cells become tissues, organs, and regulatory mechanisms as organ systems like the nervous system and the endocrine system, which are the primary controllers in internal adjustments. Physical stress shows up as injuries like cuts, burns, illnesses like colds and flus are more serious conditions like broken bones, chronic disease, or psychological conditions. Physical stress is easy to see. Physical homeostasis, we see it a lot, even though we don't always understand that it is physical homeostasis. Like something as simple as swelling is actually your body in its homeostatic process. That is more of a protective shield to the injury than it is the injury, if you understand. For instance, a lot of us suffer with sinuses. We don't actually understand though that having sinus issues is homeostatic regulation. It's because something, a substance, has entered the body that the body sees as foreign or dangerous, and it is actually doing its best to, and the body is having a internal response, which is developing mucus, and that mucus has to be excreted, which is how you are having your sinus drip and all of those things. So we actually see the effects of physical homeostasis. But at a deeper level, where microscopes reach, cells are tasked with maintaining consistent levels of temperature, ion concentration, which is just electrolytes. We know them as minerals, and we know them as vitamins and minerals. pH balance, water volume, and more using metabolic processes. Metabolism is the sum of all chemical reactions in the body that sustain life, and homeostasis is where this comes into play. Let's run through a few of the functions happening at the micro level, which is responsible for what shows up at the macro level. So these things are happening within the cell, and then you are seeing them show up within the body. Ion concentration is the balance of electrolytes like sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, etc. These are all essential compounds needed for optimal health, but everything has its balance. And the body works continuously to maintain that balance. Everything that is healthy can become something that is unhealthy. That is basically what that is. And even though your body needs them, if you put in more than the body can use, it can become detrimental. pH balance. The pH balance is generally between 7.0 and 7.3. It is the balance of acidity to alkalinity in the blood, and no matter what is happening in our internal or external world, our cells are working to stay within that range of 7.0 to 7.3. The body has a balanced state. It is mostly alkaline, but there are a lot of things in the body, like stomach acids, that are also acid for the sake of the roles they play. If we are too alkaline, we are moving towards disease. If we are too acidic, we are moving towards disease. Both of them, when they are out of their original balance, will create issues. Osmosis is the balance of water being pumped in and out of the cells in response to change in order to keep the environment optimal. You need water, but too much of it is destructive. Individual cells respond spontaneously to regulate the temperature of the internal environment. We see this with shivers and sweats. Muscle spontaneously contract to cause shivers. So you could understand from this how the body literally controls things without your input. Muscles spontaneously contract to create to create what we call shivers. That is to produce heat in the body. Your muscles contracting is producing the heat. That is to keep the internal space nice and in balance. And on the other hand, glands will release water, which we understand as sweat. But the sweat drying off of our body is actually what cools the internal environment. The body is always going to respond to its environment with or without us consciously. And because this is an automated process, we have to ensure that we are doing things that does not disrupt the capacity for the body to have its natural responses. Macromolecule balance is the maintenance of a stable condition. All cells need fat, glucose, and protein structures for the optimal form and essential functioning of the cell, not to be confused with the version of these molecules we consume at the macro level. This does not apply to the fats, carbs, and proteins that we understand. This is more of a molecule that is responsible for a lot of the structure and energy for the cells to function. Has absolutely nothing to do with food. Waste removal would be the mechanisms involved in the end result of metabolic processes. Because there are so many metabolic processes happening within the body that have their natural byproducts being made, waste removal is extremely important. Things like inflammation, things like dead skin from cuts and bruises, things like the end products of food we consume, things like the cellular responses to everything we use, from colognes to creams. These are all producing waste products that need to be removed to prevent disruption to the internal environment. These are all just some of the major players in physical homeostasis to give a visual to many of the metabolic processes of everyday life. As the physical aspect of us experiences the continuous stimuli of the environment, it triggers the mind's activation to send signals back to the body to ensure regulation. And this is where we get to the mental aspect of ourselves. Mental homeostasis is the mind's ability to maintain stability by the natural tendency to seek balance and equilibrium in response to disruptions. Yes, your choices, your behaviors, everything you're doing is actually the byproduct of your mind seeking its own balance. It is always going to do it. When we are children, it is a natural response which we cry for things that are heavy. We move a lot, like a lot of flipping, jumping when it comes to excess intake of probably sugars or those different things. And when we're adults, that changes to whatever we choose. When we are adults, we tend to get so far away from our body's natural responses because of conditioning. And not just conditioning, but because the default mode network is going to choose whatever has been implemented enough to become a set point. The mind regulates itself similar to how the body regulates temperature. If a psychological state becomes too high, the mind will work to decrease it. If a psychological state becomes too low, the mind will work to increase it. These are all automated biological processes, but can also be influenced by cognitive mechanisms. That is the conditioning part. Cognitive mechanisms are the conditioning parts. We are affected constantly by our many biological drives, causing arousal and inspiring organisms to take action to reduce tension and return to the state of balance. These states range from physiological needs like thirst and hunger to biological states like connection, exhaustion, and curiosity. When a drive has been aroused, the trigger influences our behaviors and narrows our attention to focus on stimuli that can restore well-being. All motivational forces are fundamental forces that prompt action to satisfy a need. You see, the reason we're in relationships, the reason we go for walks, the reason we eat healthily or overeat, the reason we either doom scroll or move, as in something, some form of physical fitness, the reason we cry, have conversations, are all of the ways the mind is actually seeking balance. This involves mechanisms that balance excitatory and inhibitory signals like dopamine, which excites, and GABA, which inhibits. Excitation and inhibition are key factors in healthy neuron functioning and the overall neural network stability. Neuronal health also requires the balance of electrolytes, pH, concentration, and these other functions at a physical level, which is vital for membrane potential. So membrane potential is the charge, is the capacity. So like membrane potential is how we do everything. Membrane potential is how cells fire. For example, we understand things like electric plugs, but all electric plugs have different potentials. So we have 350 watts, we have 750 watts, and the watts go up. That is basically the same thing of a human cell. The membrane potential is the charge that the cell can facilitate. Whenever you contract muscles, that is your cell's membrane potential in action. Whenever your neurons are active, that is the cell's membrane potential in action. Synaptic activity, which is just neuronal communication through electrical signals, play many roles in mental homeostasis. While these processes are often automated, moderate to high level conflicts may require conscious effort and cognitive control to successfully restore equilibrium. When inconsistencies arise between emotional drive, psychological regulation, and physiological response, an innate function automatically forces attention to it. This drive motivates us to make changes, which can be positive, like improving a career, or negative, like overindulging. Mental homeostasis is crucial in maintaining psychological balance, which is necessary for survival and is an active, ongoing process that works alongside physical homeostasis as well as emotional homeostasis, which we'll get to next. Overuse of brain pathways in the stress response can lead to mental and physical illnesses. These are the things that teach you the importance of your environments, whether it be personal, professional, or academic. There is a lot to be considered when it comes to truly understanding the health of the human organism. Stress is not always something that you are experiencing consciously. And because it is something we are not always experiencing consciously, we tend to put ourselves in harm's way. And because those things don't show up physically until years later in like health complications, maybe a mental health scare or something like that, we don't actually take preventative methods seriously. Preventative methods is staying away from people, places, or things that causes our body's internal engines to fire over and over and over and over until they're burnt out or destroyed. Mental and emotional stability work synergistically instead of separately for the complex processes of the brain that are involved in psychological stability. Energy balance is how the brain uses complex neural networks to regulate homeostasis, influencing a wide range of behaviors to promote energy expenditure when the internal energy is out of balance. Everything we do on a daily basis is the body trying to regulate itself. I was having a conversation recently with some person who I was telling them that when people are doom scrolling and when people are indulging in substances and other things like that, is actually really a regulatory process. Our regulatory processes will only ever follow what we are accustomed to doing unless we change it. A lot of us are suffering from our subconscious fears of survival, our subconscious fears of death, our subconscious fears of loneliness, and these other things because of the way we were conditioned. The way the mind understands that is only based on whatever information we have to give it understanding with. And a lot of the information we have to give our brains and bodies understanding with actually creates more problems because the brain and body doesn't actually need understanding. The brain and body knows itself better than you know yourself. The brain and body needs space. The brain and body needs connection. The brain and body needs nutrients. The brain and body needs love. It needs safety. As you understand who you are, you will understand how all of these things come into play and how you hold the power. And here is where we tie in the emotional experience of the human organism. Because you see, the emotional promotes the mental, and the mental manifests as the physical. It's all just a relationship formed out of another relationship and what comes out of all of that. So, how exactly do all of these mental responses and physical expressions happen? How? How is all of this happening? Why is all of this happening? Where the fuck is it coming from? Emotion. Aha. The many chemical reactions at the biochemical level, which is energy in motion. Emotion. When we think about emotions, we often understand the physical expressions like crying, shouting, or even retreating. But when I talk about emotions, it's in reference to what causes such expressions at a deeper level, not its byproduct. Emotion is a biological response to stimuli that causes a physiological reaction which promotes a physical expression. These energy movements require emotional homeostasis to coordinate internal biochemical signaling processes that cells use to maintain balance. Emotional homeostasis is the mind and body's way of returning to a stable, energetic baseline after the movement of energy and the stress it causes. Emotional homeostasis is achieved through the interplay of neural circuits, hormones, and cognitive appraisal mechanisms to help the body and mind adapt back to dynamic equilibrium. The body regulates energy intake, storage, and expenditure to ensure optimal cellular function and overall well being. Emotional reactions are interconnected with physiological responses and have influence on the nervous system, endocrine system, and immune system. Emotional stress triggers the body's stress response, which causes cellular changes, while long term stress is linked to cellular damage. Emotional balance is achieved through the interconnected relations of mechanisms that help the body and mind adapt to dynamic equilibrium, where the goal is fluid balance rather than constancy. It also allows the integration of emotional and physiological adaptations. Dynamic equilibrium isn't about being constantly happy or motivated, but about maintaining a state where emotions fluctuate smoothly within a healthy range. This allows us to experience, express, and adapt to the full spectrum of emotions. Signaling pathways are used to respond to environmental changes, which prevent fluctuations levels that could impact cellular integrity. So your emotional experience is impacting the cells. And this is one of the head reasons why a lot of things start out extremely exciting at first and become extremely heavy and destabilizing along the way, because your emotional experience requires regulation, it requires time for adaptation, and it requires some sort of change to accompany the adaptation that comes through development. This is one of the reasons why things start out really well for us in regards to a relationship, in regards to a job, in regards to something that we indulge in for pleasure. But the longer we take part in it, the more it changes our experiences with ourselves, because the cells are adapting to every single thing that we are experiencing and everything that we're choosing. This is where self development comes in. Our body and our brain has a natural adaptation to the stimuli it's experiencing. Natural. Whether you are consciously experiencing or not, your body is adapting. When the body and the brain is adapting, but we don't change our environment, we don't change the way we consume, we don't change the people we interact with. No, the body and brain are going into their survival states. Balance, not elimination. The principle isn't to avoid or eliminate negative emotions, but to experience and process them with resilience and adaptation using regulatory methods. However, you cannot use an excitatory method for regulation. That is where a lot of our issues come in, because instead of regulating, which requires space, It requires nothingness. It requires assistance, maybe with our nutrients or whatever, because the body needs those things to function. But instead, we normally give it things that also bring in more information, or it creates excitement within. Not necessarily experienced excitement, but excitement, the body, the cells. A key benefit of successful emotional balance is increased emotional strength and the capacity to manage challenges within a healthy range to avoid overwhelm and burnout. Yeah, challenges are extremely good, but if you're from challenge to challenge to challenge to challenge to challenge, your body is not getting any rest. Your brain is not getting the chance to recalibrate. You are not getting the chance to integrate, and that is overwhelm and burnout. The most common response used to counteract a stimulus is the negative feedback loop. This is where fluctuations in the output are being reduced by the regulatory mechanisms of homeostasis. To understand negative feedback loops, you have to take away the English definition of the word negative. The sun is coming and giving me a fight, man. But anyhow, soon then. Right, what I was saying is the negatives. When you hear negative and positive when it comes to the mechanisms of the body, you have to think about it on the number scale version of negative and positive, and not the language, the definition. You have the 0 in the middle, you have -1 on the left side, and you have +1 on the right side. This is what is happening within your body. It does not mean definitions. A negative feedback loop is really just your body sending a negative charge to counteract positive charges. The excess of positive charges that are causing movement, are causing excitation, anything like that. The immune system is also highly involved due to its role in maintaining the health of central nervous system, which regulates emotional reactions and emotional states. And in the brain, cognitive appraisals are being fired off to interpret and make sense of the situation. Our subjective understanding influences the way we experience and regulate the arousal and express our emotions. In every moment, we need to be able to regulate emotional states via mental direction and physical expenditure. Our understanding creates the environment, creates the experience that we are going to have. Not necessarily the actual experience, but our understanding. For instance, I'm going to use something that is very familiar to us. The way we understand emotions is the way we were taught them. We were taught emotions as sadness, we were taught emotions as anger, we were taught emotions as these different things. But emotions is really just energy being aroused. Whatever understanding we have is what determines where our mind fuels that energy that is being aroused. So basically, understand the constructs that are given based on what they are. For instance, anger. If you understand your anger, you will understand that something offensive to you has happened. It does not make that thing offensive, but in your world, it is offensive to you. You respond or react depending on how well you have been regulating the emotions surrounding this thing, you will be able to respond. If you have not been regulating your emotions surrounding this thing, you will only be able to react. You will only be able to operate within the grip of the emotion instead of within the grounded understanding and safety of yourself and your organism. Majority of the time, we are not defending ourselves, we're defending our ego. Our ego is really just our understanding of ourselves, our understanding of life. The ego is neither bad or good, it just is. Whatever is in the subconscious is what the ego is going to use and bring to the conscious mind so that you could experience life with, so that you could respond to life with, so that you could choose whatever you're choosing, so that you could do whatever you're doing. A lot of people have the idea of weakness and strength, and those sort of things are surrounding emotions. So whenever they experience the stimuli within, that is the emotional stimuli, they only know how to react as though they are in danger. And that has absolutely nothing to do with the outside force and everything to do with the internal force. If these people did not feel a sense of unsafety in their emotional experience, they could be grounded, they could have conversations, and they could build stronger relationships with themselves and the world. When emotional homeostasis is disrupted, it impacts the organism's ability to cultivate and use the energy required to align with well-being. And that brings us to the final aspect of self, energy homeostasis. Energy homeostasis is the all. And over the next episodes, we are going to understand these things way deeper than now. Because these things are so intimately connected, one thing always applies to the other. The way it applies is just slightly different. But when it comes to human experience, everything is energetic. Even your body that you could see. Energy homeostasis is the process of balancing energy production and consumption to ensure proper cell function and survival. This balance is maintained by sensing cellular energy levels and adjusting metabolic processes like mitochondrial respiration, the process where cells convert stored energy in food into usable energy, or the process where cells are triggered by external or internal cues and produce their own energy. Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cells. There is no energy for your cells where there is no mitochondria. Autophagy is our cellular cleanup process where the cell degrades and recycles its own components. It is important for maintaining cellular health and energy balance, especially during times of stress or low nutrient availability. Energy homeostasis involves an interplay of metabolic, electrical, and magnetic principles. Metabolism, as you would have heard earlier, encompasses all the chemical processes that sustain life, while electrical activity generated by the body's own functions and are influenced by external fields play a crucial role in nerve signaling and cellular function. And with all of this electrical activity, magnetic fields are formed, which can influence various biological processes. Electrical currents naturally flow through the body due to chemical reactions and ion movements. Nerve signals are transmitted as electrical impulses, and electrolytes carry electrical charges when dissolved in body fluids, which is why balance is so vital. Because of cell-to-cell communication, we are naturally producing electrical currents in the body. Everything within our system that produces an electrical current is also producing a magnetic field. And because all of these things have a specific balance, whenever we go out of that balance, we create instability within our cells functioning. Everything we're doing, everything we're living, everything we walk past on a daily basis is electricity in the form of the action potential in the cells that make up the thing. And all of these things also produce a magnetic field that interacts with our magnetic fields. Electrical homeostasis describes the constant balancing of energy supply and demand in a grid. The interaction between energy storage, generation and consumption is maintained in these microgrids. The balance is maintained by control systems such as those in power plants. We are a power plant. And just like any power plant can explode, just like any power plant could get weaker over time and need parts changing, just as a power plant is known as something that you have to take precautions and those different things whenever it is functioning. All of that applies to our body in similar ways. Okay, the sun is really starting to get feisty and the trees are moving. So when you see this little white thing here happening, just know that I am in nature. And sometimes nature does what nature does. The human body creates its own magnetic field due to electrical activity. Low frequency EMFs can induce circulating currents in the body, potentially affecting nerve and muscle function, while high frequency EMFs can cause cellular and DNA changes. The regulation of magnetic fields are vital to the health of the cells. So what we need to understand about the energetic level is that it is responsible for everything else. And because it is responsible for everything else, we need to ensure its functioning, because without its functioning, our functioning is disrupted. Our health is disrupted. Our peace, internal peace is disrupted. Our potential is disrupted because all cells carry their own potential. All of these drives, all of these different things that we experience, they are coming from within. They might be triggered outside, but they're coming from within. And there is an aspect of us, a cell in us, that is required to power the function required, to power the understanding, to power the drive, to move and do. And when these cells are not powered, we are not powered. It is more than just what shows up on the surface. It is fundamental, happening at a fundamental level, and it is all cellular. So in order to truly take care of our well-being, we have to take care of our energy. We have to have a deeper relationship with life from the fundamental level, which is the movement of our energy and everything it causes. If you do not understand how your energy is moving, if you do not understand what the movement of that energy is going to trigger, you do not understand what you should do in order to facilitate it and to prevent what might be able to go wrong, because every single thing has the capacity of every single possibility that's out there. When it comes to the things that you can do in order to keep these things in balance, I'm going to give you general stuff today, because the way the conversations are structured, we are looking at every single thing from the deeper level. So we are also going to look at fitness, nutrition, and mindfulness and all those different things at a later state of our conversations with humanity. But if you look at episode 1, you will see that episode 1 actually contains a lot of the things that you could do for regulatory means. And every single episode is going to have the same regulatory means, because we are discussing the same thing in 4 dimensions. It's all a deeper level of the same thing. It is all a greater look at the same thing. It is all the cause and the effect, and the effect and the cause. So because it is all the same thing, every single advice you get for one is the same advice for all. For one, we always want to produce the body with nutrients. You want to produce the body with nutrients by putting in whole, live, electrical food. What is whole, live, electrical food? Fruits, vegetable, and whole foods, like whole grains. These are all nutrient rich and benefit the body. connection. Human connection, you could actually produce energy from human connection because of the way your body responds to connection, to touch, to love, to joy. These trigger really high frequency responses within your body, where your body releases things like oxytocin. It triggers things like serotonin, and these are extremely regulatory within the system. Movement, some form of exercise, go for walks, that is one form, and that takes care of a lot of the things, sweating a lot of the negative chemicals out of your bloodstream, and it also helps with heart health. But you also need to do some form of strength training, because muscle in itself is the organ of longevity. Muscle being contracted produces, again, a lot of high frequency chemicals for the body to benefit from. When you have muscle, you have natural regulatory mechanisms, because those muscles need to be fed. And the way they are going to be fed is by taking the glucose and the nutrients and all those other things that we normally consume in. When you don't have muscle, majority of these things are going to become excess. Mindset. A lot of the things that we are living in life, we have no choice but to do, because survival is extremely dependent on them. However, everything is what the mind determines it is, and your response to life is mental. When you accept things for what they are, they do not impact you. You see it, you adjust to it. They do not have the normal impacts that they would have when you do not see it for what it is and accept it for what it is. It is an extremely daunting task, but whatever you're doing, wherever you're going, whoever you're seeing, you need to be able to see it for exactly what it is. When it is all understood, it is all actually very easy. The only reason why it is not easy right now is because it is not our conditioning. It is only because we have conditioning to get around, and that conditioning is structured on our energy, which is going to be experienced as an emotional response and those sort of things. But when we understand that that is what is happening too, then we could sit and ground ourselves a lot more in the arousal of those things. It's a lot to take in, but it's not really a lot to do. And over the last 13 years, the only reason why it would take that long is because in everything, I was also eradicating my conditioning, adapting my life, living and all those things, because I was living it. I was living all of my changes in real time as I learned new things. That is a process psychologically. That is a process within the body. There is a lot more happening in the body that you cannot see. And that is the length of time it takes when you are doing it yourself, when you are doing the learning, when you are doing the regulating, when you are doing the self-love and the self-everything. But if we come together as a community and do these things together, learn these things together, we can actually provide each other with the space. We could provide each other with the connection. And it's as simple as a touch. It's as simple as a be here, be present. It is that simple. Doing all of it alone is what creates the big challenges that come with it. You don't necessarily intend to do it alone, but the environments you're in are the environments you're in because of the ignorance. So when you are no longer using the ignorance, the environment don't make sense. The people don't even make sense. So you are tasked to do what you need to do for your own health and the development of yourself. And with that said, I am going to end this conversation. This has come to the end of today's conversation with you guys. I hope you are getting as much clarity as my brain is getting freedom, and that this all becomes a community of health, wellness, and wholeness for the benefit of our organisms and the benefit of our futures. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share this with your loved ones or on your platforms, because there are a lot of people who can benefit from everything that is happening here. And thank you if you do. Until next time, goodbye.